The large meeting hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Jack Miller stepped up to the podium. His plain black shoes made a soft tapping sound against the shiny floor. The room was filled with beings from over 30 different planets, all looking down at him from their raised seats. Jack cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. At 42, he was not young anymore, but the excitement in his eyes made him look like a boy with a new toy. His slightly wrinkled lab coat had a coffee stain near the pocket. He had been too busy preparing his presentation to care about such small details. "Respected members of the council," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Thank you for allowing me to present my work today. As you know, humans have been part of this great gathering of species for almost 30 years now. In that time, we have learned much, but we believe we also have something to offer." A low murmur ran through the alien representatives. Most looked bored already. Humans were still new to space travel compared to the others. The Artrix, with their tall blue bodies and 6 eyes, had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. The ancient Valorians, who looked like walking tree trunks with glowing spots, had been doing it even longer. Jack tapped on his tablet, and a large image appeared behind him. It showed a complex set of equations and diagrams. "The current method of faster-than-light travel used by all council species requires enormous energy," Jack continued. "My team and I have developed a new theory we call quantum displacement. Instead of forcing a ship through space, we believe we can fold space itself, allowing travel without the massive energy costs." The murmuring grew louder. A tall Artrix stood up, his blue skin reflecting the bright lights of the hall. This was Professor Rix, head of the Council's Science Division, and one of the most respected scientists in the galaxy. "Dr. Miller," he said, his voice deep and smooth, "are you suggesting that your species, which has been capable of space travel for less than 2 centuries, has discovered something that the combined scientific minds of the galaxy have missed for millennia?" Jack nodded. "Yes, sir. Sometimes a fresh perspective." Professor Rix raised a hand, cutting him off. "Let me be clear. You are proposing that your primitive understanding of quantum physics has led you to a breakthrough that our greatest minds have not seen." "The theory is sound," Jack insisted, pointing to his equations. "If the Council would provide funding and resources, we could build a working prototype within a year." The first laugh came from the Valorian section, a deep, rumbling sound that reminded Jack of grinding stones. Then the Artrix joined in, their high-pitched chuckles filling the room. Soon, most of the hall was laughing. Professor Rix didn't laugh. He just looked at Jack with what seemed like pity in his 6 eyes. "Dr. Miller, your enthusiasm is noted, but I must remind you that the Artrix developed the current FTL drive after 4,000 years of research. The Valorians took even longer. The laws of physics do not change simply because humans wish them to." Jack felt his face grow hot, but he stood his ground. "The math checks out. If you would just look at—" "We have looked," another council member called out. "Your equations contain errors that a first-year student would not make. Space cannot be folded like a piece of paper." More laughter followed. Jack looked around the room, seeing nothing but mockery or boredom on the alien faces, all except one. In the human section sat Ambassador Helen Grant. Unlike the scientists and engineers around her, Helen was a career diplomat with little scientific background. She was in her 50s with short gray hair and a kind face that had seen too many late-night negotiations. Right now, that face showed something rare in the council chambers: genuine interest. "The request for funding is denied," Professor Rix announced firmly. "This council suggests that human scientists focus on more suitable projects for your species' level of development. Perhaps improving your existing propulsion systems would be a better use of your talents." Jack stood frozen at the podium. 3 years of work, dismissed in minutes. The room began to empty as council members stood and left, many still chuckling among themselves. Ambassador Grant approached him as he gathered his materials. "That was rough," she said, helping him collect his papers. "For what it's worth, I thought you held your ground well. Jack shook his head. They didn't even consider it. Didn't even look at the math. That's politics, not science, Helen replied. The older species don't like being shown up, especially by newcomers like us. They walked out together into the massive hallway of the council building. Towering pillars rose 50 meters high, carved with the achievements of the member species. The human section was notably small. So what will you do now? Helen asked as they waited for the transport tube. Jack stared straight ahead. Go back to Luna. Keep working. They're wrong, Ambassador. I know they're wrong. Helen studied him for a moment. You really believe in this, don't you? This isn't just wounded pride talking. It would work, Jack said simply. If I had the resources, I could prove it. The transport tube arrived, humming softly. As they stepped inside, Helen made a decision. I can't promise much, she said quietly. The Earth government follows the Council's lead on most scientific funding, but I might be able to divert some minor resources your way. Nothing official, you understand. Jack looked at her in surprise. Why would you do that? You're not a scientist. Helen smiled. Let's just say I don't like seeing good ideas die because of politics. Plus, the look on Professor Rix's face if you succeed would be worth it. Back in his small room at the Earth Embassy, Jack called his lab assistant. Tom. It's me. The council said no. Tom Reed sighed on the other end. I figured they would. Those blue guys have had a monopoly on space travel tech forever. They're not giving it up easily. We're not stopping, Jack said firmly. Ambassador Grant might help with some resources. It won't be much, but we'll make it work, Tom finished. The lab's still ours for the next 6 months before they reassign it. That's enough time to build a small prototype. Jack looked out his window at the gleaming spires of the council city. Alien ships zipped through the sky, all using the same centuries-old technology that everyone accepted as the only way to travel between stars. They laughed, Tom, he said quietly. They didn't even look at the math, just laughed. There was a moment of silence before Tom responded. Then I guess we'll have to make them stop laughing. Jack nodded to himself. Get the lab ready. I'm coming home tomorrow. We have work to do. As he packed his bag, Jack taped his rejected proposal to the wall and stared at it. Someday, he promised himself, these equations would change everything. Someday, they wouldn't be laughing anymore. 6 months after the Council's rejection, the Lunar Research Station hummed with its usual activity. But in Lab 7, tucked away in the older section of the base, Jack Miller and Tom Reed worked in a world of their own. Their lab was a mess. Parts from old ships lay scattered across tables. Wires hung from the ceiling. 3 computer screens showed complicated diagrams that changed every few minutes. The air smelled of coffee and the special oil they used for the machines. Hand me the small wrench, Jack said, his head inside a large metal box that had once been part of a cargo ship's engine. Tom passed him the tool. At 35, Tom was younger than Jack, with short brown hair and strong hands that could fix almost anything. He had worked with Jack for 7 years, and he had never seen his boss so determined. The power coupling is almost ready, Tom said, looking at one of the screens. But we're still missing a stabilizer for the quantum field. Jack pulled his head out of the box and wiped sweat from his forehead. His face looked thinner than 6 months ago. Dark circles under his eyes showed he wasn't sleeping enough. We can use the one from the old satellite. It's not perfect, but it should work for the first test. A soft beep came from Tom's pocket. He checked his phone and smiled. Ambassador Grant sent another package. It's waiting at the front desk. Jack nodded. Good. I hope it's the rare materials I asked for. Helen Grant had kept her promise. Every month, small packages arrived at the lab. Parts that were hard to find, materials that were usually reserved for official projects. Nothing too expensive or obvious, but enough to keep their work going. Tom went to get the package while Jack sat down at one of the computers. His hand shook slightly as he typed. The shaking had started 2 months ago, along with the headaches. The doctor said it was from stress and lack of sleep, but Jack knew better. Working with unstable quantum fields was dangerous. No one fully understood how they affected the human body. The lab door opened, but it wasn't Tom who entered. A tall blue figure ducked under the doorframe. Jack turned quickly, surprised to see an Artrix in his lab. "Dr. Miller," the Artrix said in a smooth voice, "I am Kelter, scientific observer from the Council." Jack stood up. "I wasn't told about any observers." Kelter's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "The Council has heard that you continue to work on your theory. As it involves quantum mechanics, which can be dangerous, they sent me to ensure safety protocols are being followed." Jack didn't believe this for a second. The Council didn't care about their safety. They wanted to know if humans were actually making progress. "We follow all standard safety rules," Jack said coldly. "You can check our logs." Kelter walked around the lab, looking at their equipment with what seemed like amusement. Interesting approach, using salvaged parts from outdated technology. He picked up a small device. "This communication unit is at least 20 years old." "It still works," Jack said, taking it back. "We use what we have." Tom returned with a small box. He stopped when he saw Kelter. "Tom, this is Kelter from the Council. He's here to observe." Tom nodded politely but said nothing. He put the box on a table and opened it carefully. Inside were several small crystals that glowed with a soft blue light. Kelter moved closer. "Quantium crystals. Those are quite rare. May I ask how you obtained them?" "They were in storage," Jack lied, "left over from an old project." Kelter clearly didn't believe him but didn't push further. "I will visit regularly to monitor your progress. The Council is curious about what you hope to achieve with such limited resources." After Kelter left, Tom kicked a nearby chair. "Great. Now we have a spy watching us." "It changes nothing," Jack said firmly. "We keep working." The next few weeks were harder with Kelter's regular visits. The Artrix would sit quietly in a corner, watching them work, asking questions that seemed innocent, but were clearly meant to find flaws in their methods. One night, after another long day, Jack had a seizure. His body shook violently for almost a minute. Tom called the medical team, who took Jack to the hospital wing. "You need rest," the doctor told him. "Your brain scans show unusual activity. We've never seen patterns like this before." Jack was back in the lab the next day, ignoring the doctor's orders. "I'm fine," he told a worried Tom. "We don't have time to waste." A month later, Tom made an important discovery. He had been up all night fixing equipment damaged during their latest failed test. "Jack, come look at this," he called out excitedly. Jack hurried over. Tom had connected their quantum field generator to a simple flat screen. "I was trying to see where the energy was leaking," Tom explained. "But look what happens when I turn it on." He flipped a switch. The flat screen seemed to bend slightly, though it didn't break. "It's creating the displacement effect in 2 dimensions," Jack said, his eyes wide. "We've been trying to create it in 3 dimensions all this time. What if we start with a 2D displacement and then expand it?" Tom suggested. Jack grabbed a pen and paper. His hands were shaking badly now, but his mind was clear. For hours, he wrote equations and drew diagrams. "This could work," he finally said. "We need to rebuild the generator. Make it focus on creating a flat field first, then expand it into 3 dimensions." They worked for 3 days straight, stopping only for short naps and quick meals. When Kelter came for his regular visit, they hid their new design. Still no progress. The Artrix asked, not hiding his satisfaction. Perhaps it's time to accept the Council was right. Jack just nodded, waiting for Kelter to leave. As soon as the Artrix was gone, they went back to work. 2 weeks later, they were ready for a test. Their new device was surprisingly small, about the size of a microwave oven. They called it the Fold Drive. "If this works," Jack said as they prepared the test, It will change everything. Tom looked at his friend. Jack had lost weight, and his hands shook constantly now, but his eyes burned with the same determination as always. "We should call Ambassador Grant," Tom suggested. "She helped make this possible." Jack nodded. "Yes, but first, let's make sure it works." They set up a simple test. The fold drive would create a quantum displacement field around a small metal ball. If it worked, the ball would disappear and reappear 1 meter away. Jack checked the connections one last time. "Ready?" Tom nodded and started the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Jack pressed the button. The fold drive hummed softly. The metal ball glowed for a second and vanished. Both men held their breath. 1 second passed. 2, 3. Then, with a soft pop, the ball appeared exactly 1 meter from its starting point. Tom let out a whoop of joy. Jack collapsed into a chair, tears in his eyes. "We did it," he whispered. "It actually works." They looked at each other, knowing that everything was about to change. The aliens had laughed at them. Soon, they would be forced to take notice. "Let's call Helen," Jack said, reaching for his phone. "We have news to share." Ambassador Helen Grant arrived at Lunar Research Station 3 days after Jack's call. She stepped out of the transport shuttle, looking tired but excited. The journey from Earth to the Moon still took almost 2 days, even with the best ships. "Show me," she said as soon as she met Jack and Tom in their lab. No hello, no small talk. Her eyes were bright with curiosity. Jack led her to a table where the fold drive sat. It looked even smaller than before. Tom had made some improvements, removing unnecessary parts and making the whole thing more compact. "That's it?" Helen asked, circling the device. "I expected something bigger." "That's one of the best things about it," Jack explained. "Current FTL drives are huge. They need massive power cores and cooling systems. This doesn't. We've done 7 more tests," Tom added. "It works every time. We can move an object exactly where we want it to go." Helen nodded slowly. "And you're sure it's safe?" Jack and Tom exchanged looks. "Reasonably sure," Jack said. "We haven't tested it with living things yet." "I understand the Council is sending an official delegation," Helen said, sitting down. "They want to see what you're doing." Jack wasn't surprised. Kelter must have reported back. "Yes, and they're not happy. Professor Ricks himself is coming, along with representatives from 5 other species." Tom crossed his arms. "Let them come. We'll show them exactly what humans can do." "It's not that simple," Helen warned. "They're talking about taking over the project. They say quantum technology is too dangerous for inexperienced species to handle." Jack's face hardened. "This is our work. We did this with scraps and leftovers while they laughed at us." Helen pulled out a small tablet. "I've been studying council law for the past few days. There's a rule about technological sovereignty. If we can prove this technology was developed independently by humans without borrowing from other species' research, they can't claim it." "We have all our notes and logs," Tom said. "We can prove we did this ourselves." "Good. The delegation arrives tomorrow. Be ready." Helen stood up. "Now, show me how it works." Jack set up another demonstration. This time, they placed a small plant in the test area. "We're going to move it 5 meters, Jack explained. "If it works with living matter, we'll try something bigger next." Tom activated the fold drive. The small plant glowed briefly, then vanished. A moment later, it appeared on the other side of the lab, looking exactly the same. Helen walked over and touched the plant's leaves. "Amazing," she whispered. "And it's completely unharmed." "Completely," Jack confirmed. "The quantum displacement happens so fast that the plant doesn't even have time to notice it's being moved." "What's the farthest you've tested?" Helen asked. "Just within the lab," Tom admitted. "But the math says distance shouldn't matter. The space between points is what's being folded, not the object being moved through space." That night, They worked late preparing for the council delegation. Jack's hands were shaking more than ever. Twice, he had to stop work because of severe headaches. "You should see the doctor again," Tom said with concern. Jack ignored him. "We have to be ready. This is our only chance." The next morning, the council delegation arrived. Professor Rix led the group, his blue skin looking almost gray in the artificial light of the station. 5 other aliens followed him: a Valorian, 2 small green beings Jack didn't recognize, and 2 tall insects with shiny shells. Kelter stood behind them, his 6 eyes fixed on Jack. "Dr. Miller," Professor Rix said coldly, "the Council is concerned about unauthorized quantum experiments taking place here. We've come to evaluate the situation." "Welcome to our lab," Jack said with forced politeness. "We're happy to show you what we've been working on." The aliens looked around the messy lab with clear disapproval. The Valorian made a rumbling sound that might have been a laugh. "This is where you claim to have made a breakthrough in quantum physics?" Professor Rix asked. "With this junk?" "Yes," Jack said simply. "Would you like a demonstration?" Without waiting for an answer, he nodded to Tom, who activated the full drive. A metal cube on the table vanished and reappeared across the room. The aliens fell silent. The Valorian moved to examine the cube, picking it up and turning it over with its branch-like fingers. "A simple teleportation trick," Professor Rix said dismissively. "Many species have mastered that technology." "It's not teleportation," Jack explained. "The object isn't being disassembled and reassembled. The space between the starting point and destination is being folded. The object passes through the fold without ever traveling the distance between." "Impossible," one of the insect aliens clicked. "That would violate multiple laws of physics." "Yet you just saw it happen," Ambassador Grant said, stepping forward. "And we can prove this technology was developed independently by humans, under Article 47 of the Technology Sharing Agreement. That means it belongs to Earth." Professor Rix's eyes narrowed. "This requires further study. We will need to take this device back to the Council for proper testing." "No," Jack said firmly. "You can observe our tests, but the fold drive stays here." The tension in the room was thick. The 2 insect aliens chittered to each other, while the Valorian made a low rumbling sound. Finally, Professor Rix spoke. "Very well. Show us a real test, then. Not these parlor tricks with small objects." Jack smiled. "We were hoping you'd ask that. We've prepared something special." He led the group to a large observation window overlooking the launch bay. Below, a small probe sat ready. It was about the size of a car, with the fold drive attached to its center. "This probe will travel to Mars and back," Jack explained. "A journey that normally takes days will be completed in minutes." The aliens murmured among themselves. Even Professor Rix looked interested now. "The probe is unmanned," Tom added. "It will take photos and samples of the landing site on Mars as proof of arrival." "Proceed," Professor Rix said, his voice slightly less cold than before. Jack nodded to Tom, who activated the launch sequence from a computer terminal. The probe's engines came to life, lifting it slightly off the ground. Then the fold drive activated. There was a flash of blue light, and the probe vanished. The aliens gasped. Professor Rix's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. "Now we wait," Jack said calmly. The minutes ticked by in silence. 5, 10, 15. "Perhaps your device has simply destroyed the probe," Professor Rix suggested. At that moment, there was another flash of blue light. The probe reappeared in exactly the same spot, looking unchanged except for the red dust now covering its sampling arm. Tom rushed to the computer. "Data coming in now." "We have confirmation." The probe landed at the designated coordinates on Mars, collected samples, and returned successfully. Jack looked at the aliens. Their expressions ranged from shock to disbelief too. In Kelter's case, something that looked almost like respect. "As you can see," Jack said quietly, Humans may be new to space travel, but we have something to offer after all. Professor Ricks said nothing. For once, no one was laughing. News of the successful Mars test spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Within days, the small Lab 7 at Lunar Research Station became the center of attention. Scientists from Earth and reporters from across the human colonies wanted to see the full drive. Messages poured in from alien worlds, some congratulatory, others demanding more information. Jack sat in the station's medical wing, watching the news on a small screen. The doctor had ordered him to rest after he collapsed during a press conference. His body was getting weaker. The latest scans showed strange energy patterns throughout his nervous system. "The council has called an emergency session," Helen said, entering the room. "First time in over 100 years, according to the records." Jack managed a weak smile. "They're not laughing anymore, are they?" "Far from it." Helen sat beside his bed. "The Artrix are demanding oversight of all full drive research. The Valorians are warning about potential damage to the fabric of spacetime, and at least 7 other species have contacted Earth directly, bypassing the Council completely." "What does Earth say?" "The President wants to proceed carefully. This technology gives us leverage we've never had before." Helen paused. "How are you feeling?" Jack flexed his trembling hands. "I've been better, but it doesn't matter. We did it, Helen. We showed them all." Tom burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Jack, they approved it. The Vindication project is a go." Despite his weakness, Jack sat up straighter. "When?" "Construction starts tomorrow. They're converting one of our short-range shuttles to hold the improved full drive." Tom couldn't keep the pride from his voice. "It will be the first human ship to travel beyond our solar system using the new technology." For the next 2 weeks, Jack divided his time between the medical wing and the construction bay where the Vindication was being built. Though officially he was supposed to be resting, no one could keep him away from the project. The new ship wasn't large, just big enough for a crew of 4. But it represented humanity's greatest achievement in space travel. The improved full drive was installed at the heart of the vessel. Tom had made it even more efficient, requiring less power while creating a more stable quantum field. Council representatives arrived daily, watching the work with barely hidden anxiety. The Artrix sent a team of their best scientists, who took notes on everything and whispered among themselves. The Valorians insisted on installing monitoring devices to detect any damage to reality. Jack ignored them all. This was a human achievement, and he was determined to keep it that way. The night before the planned launch, Jack was working late in the ship when he heard someone enter. He turned to see Kelter standing in the doorway. "Dr. Miller," the Artrix said, his voice lower than usual. "May I speak with you privately?" Jack nodded, suspicious but curious. "I must admit," Kelter began, "that I was wrong about you. About humans." He moved closer, examining the full drive with what looked like genuine admiration. "This technology is remarkable. It will change everything." "Thank you," Jack said cautiously, "though that's not what you said 6 months ago." "No." Kelter's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "I believed what I was taught, that younger species need guidance, that they cannot make truly significant discoveries without building on our work." He paused. "I was wrong." Jack was surprised by the admission. "Why are you telling me this?" Kelter looked around, making sure they were alone. "Because you should know that not all Artrix think the same way. Some of us recognize the value of new perspectives." His voice dropped even lower. "And you should also know that the Artrix leadership is very unhappy about being surpassed by humans." "What are you saying?" "There are plans to seize this technology if necessary. The official launch tomorrow will have many council observers present. It would be a perfect opportunity." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "Why would you warn me?" "Because I believe this discovery belongs to those who made it. And because," Kelter hesitated, "because I have come to respect what you have accomplished." After Kelter left, Jack immediately called Tom and Helen. They moved quickly, creating a false story about mechanical problems that would delay the launch. Meanwhile, in the middle of the night, they prepared the Vindication for immediate departure. The improved drive should allow us to reach Alpha Centauri, Tom explained as they worked. That's over 4 light years away. The journey would take years with conventional drives. How long with the full drive? Helen asked. If our calculations are correct, about 2 hours. Jack insisted on being aboard, despite his worsening condition. I need to see this, he said when the others objected. I need to be part of it. Reluctantly, they agreed. The final crew consisted of Jack Tom, a pilot named Robert, and a science officer named Lisa. Helen would stay behind to handle the political fallout. At 3:00 a.m. station time, when most of the council observers were asleep, the Vindication quietly launched. Only a few trusted humans knew the real plan. Course laid in for Alpha Centauri, Robert announced from the pilot's seat. Full drive powering up. Jack watched the stars through the viewport. His hands shook so badly now that he had to clasp them together. Drive ready, Tom reported. Initiating fold in 3, 2, 1. There was a flash of blue light, and the stars outside seemed to bend. For a brief moment, Jack felt as if his body was being stretched and compressed at the same time. Then everything returned to normal, except the stars had changed position. We did it, Lisa whispered, checking her instruments. We're halfway to Alpha Centauri already. The journey continued, with the Vindication making a series of smaller jumps rather than one big one. Jack's condition worsened with each jump, but he refused to turn back. Look, Robert called out after the final jump. There it is, Alpha Centauri. The star shone brightly through the viewport. They had traveled over 4 light years in just under 2 hours. While the others celebrated, Jack quietly asked Tom to take some readings from a particular planet in the system. Something about it had caught his attention. Tom's eyes widened as the data came in. Jack, there are artificial structures on this planet. And they're old. Very old. Jack nodded, a strange calm coming over him despite his failing body. I thought so. Run a spectral analysis on the metal compositions. When the results came back, everyone fell silent. The structures on the distant world were made of alloys identical to those used on ancient Earth, from a civilization that had existed thousands of years ago. It's impossible, Lisa whispered. Humans couldn't have been here before. Unless, Jack said softly, we weren't the first humans to discover the full drive. They looked at each other, the implications sinking in. Somewhere in Earth's forgotten past, humans had already reached the stars, and then lost that knowledge. We need to tell everyone, Robert said. Jack nodded. Set course for home. I think the council might be even more surprised by this discovery than by the drive itself. As the Vindication prepared to jump back to Earth, Jack looked out at the ancient human colony with a mixture of pride and wonder. Humanity's future among the stars was just beginning. Again, 1 year after the first successful test of the full drive, Earth had changed. Ships with the new technology flew between Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies daily. Travel times that once took months now took hours. Human scientists had set up research stations on planets in 3 nearby star systems, and for the first time, aliens came to Earth not as teachers or observers, but as visitors eager to learn. Jack Miller sat in a wheelchair on the observation deck of the New Earth Embassy on the Galactic Council's homeworld. Through the large windows, he could see dozens of ships coming and going, many featuring the distinctive blue glow of human-designed full drives. His body was almost transparent now. The doctors said his cells were partially existing in multiple dimensions at once, a side effect of his repeated exposure to the quantum fields. They gave him less than a month to live. But Jack wasn't sad. He was at peace. The ceremony starts in an hour, Tom said, walking onto the deck. His friend looked different now, more confident, wearing the uniform of Earth's new space exploration agency. Are you ready? Jack nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. His voice was weak but clear. "Have they arrived yet?" "The Arctrix delegation just landed. Professor Rix is with them." Tom smiled. "He still looks unhappy about the whole thing." Jack laughed softly. "Some things never change." A year ago, when the Vindication returned from Alpha Centauri with evidence of ancient human space travelers, the galaxy had been shocked. The Council ordered immediate research into the ruins. The results proved what Jack had suspected. Humans had developed similar space-folding technology thousands of years ago, but had somehow lost that knowledge during a global disaster. This discovery changed how the other species viewed humans. They were not newcomers after all, but a species reclaiming its forgotten legacy. "Ambassador Grant is waiting outside," Tom said. "She wants to brief you before the ceremony." Helen Grant entered, looking elegant in her formal diplomatic clothes. Her hair was still gray, but she stood straighter now, carrying the confidence that came with representing a newly respected species. "Jack, how are you feeling?" she asked, sitting beside his wheelchair. "I'm fine. Just tell me what I need to do." Helen looked at her notes. "The Council has never given this honor to a human before. The Grand Chamber will be full. All 37 member species will be present." She paused. "After the ceremony, they'll announce the launch of the Galaxy Explorer mission. 100 ships from 12 different species, all with human fold drive technology, heading beyond the galaxy's edge." Jack smiled. "And Keltor? He'll be there. He's become quite the advocate for human Arctrix cooperation." Helen took Jack's partially transparent hand. "You know, when I first saw your presentation a year ago, I never imagined it would lead to this." "Neither did I," Jack admitted. "I just wanted to prove them wrong." "Well, you certainly did that." Later, sitting in the same grand chamber where the Council had once laughed at his ideas, Jack felt a strange sense of completion. The room was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. Where once there had been mockery, now there was respect. Professor Rix stood at the podium, his blue skin catching the light. "We are gathered today to present the highest scientific honor of the Galactic Council," he announced, his deep voice carrying throughout the chamber. "For the first time, this honor will be given to a human." Jack barely heard the rest of the speech. He was looking at the faces in the room. The Valorians who had once rumbled with laughter at his theory, the insect species who had declared it impossible, the small green beings who had dismissed him without a second thought. No one was laughing now. "Dr. Jack Miller," Professor Rix continued, "has revolutionized space travel with the fold drive technology. But more than that, he has taught us a valuable lesson." The Arctrix paused, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "He has reminded us that wisdom can come from unexpected places, and that no species has a monopoly on innovation." Jack was wheeled to the podium to accept the award, a crystal sphere containing a miniature replica of the galaxy. His hand shook so badly that Tom had to help him hold it. "Thank you," Jack said simply, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. "A year ago, I stood in this room and was told that humans should focus on projects suitable for our level. Today, I'm proud to say that humans have found our level, as equals among the stars." Applause filled the room, a mixture of sounds from dozens of different species. Jack looked across the chamber and saw Keltor, the Arctrix who had once spied on their work, but later became their ally. Keltor nodded slightly, a gesture of respect. After the ceremony, Jack watched from a special observation room as the Galaxy Explorer fleet prepared for launch. 100 ships of different designs, all equipped with the fold drive, formed a pattern against the stars. "It's beautiful," Lisa said. She had been the science officer on the Vindication and was now the lead researcher studying the ancient human colonies. "They say the mission will map regions of space we've never seen before," Robert added. He had piloted the Vindication and would command one of the ships in the new fleet. Tom stood beside Jack's wheelchair. "We did it, old friend." Jack nodded, watching as the ships began to glow with the familiar blue light of the fold drive. One by one, they vanished, heading beyond the edge of the known galaxy on a journey that would have been impossible just a year ago. A soft voice spoke from behind them. A remarkable sight. Jack turned to see Keltor approaching. The Artrix moved to stand beside him, watching the last ships disappear. "I've been studying your condition," Keltor said quietly. "The way your cells exist partially in other dimensions. The doctors say there's nothing they can do," Jack replied. "Perhaps not using conventional medicine." Keltor looked down at him. "But I believe your condition might not be an ending, but a beginning. A transformation rather than a deterioration." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "We don't fully understand the quantum realms your technology accesses," Keltor explained. "But there are old stories among the Artrix of beings who transcended physical form and continued to exist in higher dimensions." The idea was fascinating, even if Jack wasn't sure he believed it. "So you're saying I might not die after all?" "I'm saying that someone who changed how we understand space might also change how we understand existence itself." As the last ship of the Galaxy Explorer fleet vanished into fold space, Jack looked down at his increasingly transparent hands. Perhaps Keltor was right. Perhaps this wasn't an ending. Either way, Jack was at peace. He had done what he set out to do. Humanity had taken its rightful place among the stars. The species that had once laughed now watched in awe. And somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, the journey was just beginning.